Hello, this is Ed White. I'm so glad you're with me today. And thank you for being here today. And today, our author is Shelly Edwards Jorgensen. And I just actually did a Twitter on this book because I had just finished it in my book order. But it's called Beautiful Ashes. And I am so happy to have today's guest with us. Shelly is going to tell us about her story and her journey as an author writing Beautiful Ashes. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Edna. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. So right away, just looking at the cover, which is so it draws you right in right away. I see a true story of murder. So all of a sudden, nosy people, we open up the book. We want to read murder. What? So we want to get into it. But tell us about your journey with this book.
Well, it was a long journey. I had to live a long life in a short period of time to be able to have this story. So I've written nothing before this other than papers and reports in school. I'm an engineer who's dyslexic. So writing a book was a challenge. I actually had help from a friend that helped me with the writing. And it was quite a journey. It was a 9-year process to get it to publication, but it was a lot of life lessons and a lot of hard things to learn to be able to have the story. And so you started off by saying it's murder, betrayal, and one woman's search for peace.
Yes.
And so that's a big subtitle, right? And
yes.
I just to give a Cliff Notes version of the story is I grew up with a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde alcoholic father who ended up murdering my mother and burning her house down. And then things got worse. So it took me a very long time to overcome everything that I've been through. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's stuff that I had to leave out of the book that there just wasn't room for. I mean, it's already almost 400 pages. So and of course everybody has a story, and that's the thing is everybody has a story, and everybody experiences hardships and adversity in their lives. And I felt impressed, and I actually was guided to write this story to try to help others find hope in their own journey of adversity and overcoming, because so many people get stuck. I was stuck for a very long time until I found my path. And so now my whole mission in life is to try to help others just number one, see that there is a path to healing. There is a path through everything that we experience, and that and at least be able to share what I've learned through my journey is my goal. So I do a lot of speaking events. I'll do book clubs so that when people read my story, then I can share more of some of the things that I've learned. People can ask me questions. I also on social media, I try to take a inspirational quote and give a life lesson around it, because my whole goal now is just to give back and to help others. And so this is really a long journey, and
right.
And it's and that's my mission in life, is to help others right now.
Yeah. So you talk about being an engineer with dyslexia. I know I've got to get to the book but I like that part because there's so many people that have disabilities, and they, and even us, that have some traumas, we kind of stop and we get stuck. We don't tell our story. Could you share having that disability? Because I've had, I have like bouts of that too. And they,
Mm-hmm.
when I was in school, they taped one of my eyes up because I was seeing it two parts of my brain. They didn't know what to do with me at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about that disability and how you overcame that in your engineering career.
Well, I kind of masked it my whole life because my older sister actually got diagnosed with dyslexia. I believe she was in the first grade. And so I
Hmm.
saw everything that was going on with her. And so
Hmm.
I was born a problem solver. So so in school, the teacher would be like, okay, we're gonna go around the room and everyone's gonna read a paragraph. I'd be like, oh crap. So I'd start counting okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm 5. So 1, 2, 3, and I'd memorize that paragraph so I didn't mess up, which means I didn't
Right.
listen to anything else that was being said
Right.
until after it was my turn. And then if the
Right.
teacher said, "Oh, Susie, please read 2 paragraphs," I'd be like, "Oh crap," you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I hid it. I hid it most of my life, and fortunately for me, I was I was strong in all the other aspects of my education. It's just
Mhm.
reading was difficult for me, and I managed to mask it. But I excelled in math and sciences. I excel.
Mhm.
I've always been a builder. I'm a woodworker. I was learning how to do. I think I even talked about this in the book. Electrical wiring when I was 6 years old. I could wire an
Mhm.
outlet.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
the house that my dad eventually burned down, trying to cover up my mother's murder. Literally, my sister and I helped build that house. I was 3 years old, and
Wow.
I'm carrying bricks to my parents
Right.
who
Wow.
who so I have more tools than most men, and I could build a house from the ground up
Yeah.
by myself if I wanted to. So I have a lot of skills in different areas, and that's the thing is, you know, where you have a weakness in one area, you have strengths in others.
Absolutely.
I have a friend who had 2 siblings that were born blind. Well, one of them
Mhm.
is a beautiful singer, and the other one did
Mhm.
radio and voiceovers because, again,
Right.
where one of the things that stuck out to me as a
Yeah.
child on The Sound of Music was, where one door closes, a window gets opened, you know, and so that's
Mhm.
kind of how it's
Mhm.
been for me.
Right. That's good. That's good information. It's good that you talk about, weaknesses and strengths. We all often lean into the weakness a lot. As
Mm-hmm.
human beings, we'll lean into it. But, at a young age, as you said, a problem solver, you already knew a skill that you had. You already knew that. It was like a gift. Like you knew that you were a
Mm-hmm.
problem solver right away. So you were able to kind of balance that out. And I know this gift probably carried over in your healing journey as you wrote all of these beautiful stories of 42, 44, 44 chapters. And you had to have some kind of ability to balance that out. What was the first encounter of your healing, in any area?
The thing was is when I got in college, or when I was in college, and um you know I had I was basically an orphan then because my dad had gone to
Hmm.
prison, my mother's dead, um and the vultures had swooped in and started stealing everything. um
Right.
and and so I found myself after my freshman year at college homeless. and penniless. And I was at a very low point. And so that was when I first sought counseling. And so I started doing talk therapy as I could afford it. I did it on campus at first, and then I did it on and off for the next 15 years, and I was still miserable. By my mid-30s, I had my own home. I had basically my dream job as an engineer for Ford Motor Company, and I just finished my MBA. And so by all accounts, on the outside, on a piece of paper, everything looked hunky-dory. On the inside, I was miserable, and I'm praying to die every day. And nobody knew it. Not even my best friend that lived with me knew it. And so finally, I reached out to a different therapist that somebody else introduced me to, and she had some different techniques. I mean, of course, I did talk therapy, but she did these outside the box, I'll say, trauma therapies that in 2000, this was in 2005. She was doing EMDR in 2005, which is now more mainstream than it was then.
Sure. Yes.
And then I did another technique which actually worked better for me than EMDR, which is called neuro-emotional technique. That's still not even a mainstream well-known technique, but I would account that for saving my life, truthfully. And then there was a few other I did some neurofeedback, which they're also using in the military for PTSD now. And craniosacral and a few other, again, I'll call them outside the box techniques. That trauma therapy was critical, but I also changed my mindset about when it came to my faith in God. It wasn't that I didn't believe that God existed, but I didn't believe in, I didn't 100% trust in his plan for me. And so once I changed my mindset and I turned my will and I learned how to just trust in that, things began to change. And there was a lot of there's a big mind shift change. And instead of getting stuck in the why did this happen to me, why, which is a natural question, I started asking the question, what am I supposed to be learning? And how am I supposed to use that knowledge to help myself and others? Because, I took a step back and I'm like, okay, what is the purpose of life? The purpose of life is for me to learn and to grow and to develop Christ-like, or if you're not a Christian, God-like characteristics of, humility, compassion, empathy, endurance, long-suffering. Well, you can't learn those things without experiencing hard things. If everything is easy, you don't have an opportunity to learn patience or long-suffering, or even humility. And how do you learn empathy if you've never experienced anything? So I started changing, and I started looking at things as something that I'm supposed to be learning from and gaining strength in my character. So now I look at all adversity, as an opportunity for growth that becomes my choice. Am I going to make this a stepping stone or a stumbling block? Am I going to allow myself to be crushed, or am I going to figure out what I can do to learn and grow and gain from this loss? And, I'm an engineer, so I'm trained in physics. Well, one of the laws of physics is equal and opposite forces. So it's the same thing with life. If you want to excel up to here, you have to be brought down to here. It's balance. So those are some of the things that I've learned.
Okay, that's wonderful. Um, you talked about all the I guess the tools that you were given to get through all of this. What part of the journey did you most use? Like, I know that you said in your 30s, right? In your 30s, you're kind of getting all this information, but I know living as a trauma victim myself, and thriving now, trust is a big issue. It's a really
Yep.
big issue because you don't trust yourself, you don't trust people. You know, the people that you trusted most to help you broke that. And as you say, betrayed you. Total betrayal. So, how do you begin? What would you suggest for our audience? How did you begin to build that trust? You know, I hear you when you said, there was faith in God, but how did you, the actual human being, start to trust?
That's a great question, because that's absolutely the fundamental. I mean, I just, I had to decide. I had to decide that I've kicked against the pricks for now, at that point, 30 some years,
Yes.
and I had to decide that not all people are going to hurt you. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that was why like I said, it was changing my trust in God. It wasn't that I didn't believe in God all along. I just didn't allow myself to trust
Mm-hmm.
him, because I mean, if your father
Right.
is going to betray you on that level, how does an arbitrary
Exactly.
heavenly father or
Yes.
God or whatever,
Being. Yes.
how are you going to trust him? Right. So
Exactly. Exactly.
I I had to take that leap of faith and say, okay, well, I've done it this way. I'm miserable. What do I have to lose? What do I have to lose? And um
Mm-hmm.
and so I just took the step. I took the step,
Yeah.
and no, it wasn't an overnight thing. It's not a light switch. The
No.
journey is not a light
Mm-mm.
switch, and it's not
Yeah.
linear.
Yeah.
It's like this.
No.
And sometimes you might
Yeah.
feel like you're going
Yeah.
backwards, and sometimes you feel like you're going
Yeah.
forwards. Sometimes you feel
Yeah.
like, is this really gonna work? But and I don't know if you experience the same thing. Is Step number one is believing that it's possible to heal, and
Yeah.
step number two
Yeah.
is believing you deserve it,
Yeah.
because that doesn't all those two things, if those two things don't exist, you can't get to step number
Can't
three,
do
which
it.
is just
You can't.
trusting.
Yeah.
So,
You can't. Yeah.
and that's the other thing that I've learned through all this, is that the whole goal of, and I believe that Satan or the devil or whoever is our adversary, and that his goal is to make us miserable. And if you can rob people of their self-esteem, then they can't get to step one of healing, because they don't believe it's
Mm.
possible, nor do they believe that they're worth it. So people get
Yeah.
stuck because they can't get past step one and two. But you can't even get to
Yeah.
step three, which is trusting God, if you don't have step one
Mm-hmm.
and two.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the
Right.
matter
And I think.
is everybody's worth it.
Mhm. Oh
So,
yeah. Everybody. Everybody. Because I had to get to the point where I had to believe like that God believed in me to do the work.
mm-hmm,
I had to
mm-hmm,
get to that point that if He believes in me, and that was a whole nother layer to the confusion. It was a whole nother layer. Now that I was able to say I deserve it, now I have to say, hey, God knows I can handle this because I'm here. God knows I
right.
can handle this. God knows that I'm, like you said, solution oriented. I can create a solution. That's what I think is important, that I come from a religious background. I was a co-pastor of a church and actually ordained evangelist. And not until I became personally engaged with God instead of conglomerately engaged with God did I really have a real great relationship. And I was my eyes were opened, and I didn't need outside um, approval or answers. I didn't need to look for answers. But it's important to really say in all of this, we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust ourselves with the answers. So no matter if we believe in God or not, because I went straight to the church after, and I had counseling as well, but I let it go because I felt like, okay, I'm gonna give it to this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust
Yeah.
myself. I didn't obtain a great relationship with God. And I think that's what's really important because I was in church miserable,
Mm-hmm. Me
miserable.
too. Me
Nothing
too.
was changing. Nothing was
Mm-hmm.
changing. Everything was dismal. And I was doing God's work. I was miserable. Was miserable
Yep.
until until I made a change, until I was separated from that, and I couldn't talk to anybody. I was in the
Yeah.
hospital, couldn't talk to anybody, and that's when God started talking to me for real. So I think
Yeah.
trusting yourself should be in there, and should be in that little toolkit. Just trust yourself. Start to trust yourself. Take steps. I have the answer. I gotta believe that I have the answer because God gave me the answer, and I think that's what gets lost in translation around religion and all of that. It really gets lost.
Yep.
I lived it. You really have to begin. And I like how you in your book you really dug in. And I know you probably had a whole lot more to go in here. And I was like, okay, so I see this date, and I was like, okay, but what happened the next day? But I know you had to slim it down. I know you had to slim it down. I was reading the part where you had an accident, or you had surgery. You was having surgery. Um, can you tell me about that? Because I really wanted to know how you felt about that, having this. I think it's a knee surgery, right? Knee surgery, right?
um yeah, well, I don't know which surgery because I had multiple, so it could have been the knee surgery.
Oh, right. Okay. So, okay. Let me go ahead. Go
uh,
ahead. I'm gonna
well,
find it while you talk about it. Go ahead.
okay, well, if it's the knee surgery,
Yeah.
what was it that you wanted to know about the knee surgery?
Like, I know you expressed a lot of you told a lot of the details in
Oh,
that chapter. Yeah. So how are you feeling about that? Because I know you just said, "Oh, I had so many surgeries." What was your feelings right then and there? Because what was it then? What was it? It was like not again. How did you feel
oh,
about God? At that point. At
oh,
that
right. Well, with the knee
point.
surgery, I was still living with my dad. I mean, I just got my first car, and it was 2 days later, and I blew my knee out so badly that I couldn't drive it.
Yeah.
And even on the way to the hospital, even on the way to the doctor's office, my dad is like threatening me because he's inconvenienced by taking me to the
Yeah.
doctor for the surgery. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, at that point in my life, it was like a continual, just as I'd stagger to my feet, the rug would be pulled out again. And that
Yes. Yes.
that knee surgery led to 5 knee surgeries and a total replacement at 34 years
Yes.
old. and
Wow.
and I
Yeah.
didn't even talk about that. I mean, the replacement, I got run into the wall on the exit of the hospital, and I've had constant pain in that leg. Also, when I was in
Wow.
high school, I spent 2 months of my senior year in a body cast. I didn't talk about that either because
Yeah.
so I've had a lot of and I've had 8 abdominal surgeries. I talked about some of those late in the later
Hmm.
chapters, but
Hmm.
but it was one thing after another after another after another. And I
Right.
realize now that part of that is related to trauma. There's a book, it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And,
Yes, I got that. I love that book. Yes, the body keeps score. It's important.
yeah,
That's
and
it.
so a lot of your physical illness is associated with unresolved trauma that you're storing, and
Yeah.
it's making you sick. And I didn't realize that
Mm-hmm.
until probably the
Yeah.
last 10 years. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the the illnesses, all of those things, they would compound and compound, and you would think, okay, what's
Mm-hmm.
next? What's next? And
Right.
so I was just doing the best I could to survive at that point. And
Yeah.
and everything was overwhelming. It was just another thing. And with the knee surgery, I
Mm-hmm.
was still, like I said, I was still living with my dad. And
You're right.
he hadn't had his trial yet or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Very good. So tell us about when you eventually met the man you're going to marry. Tell us about that.
oh my gosh, I I have an angel. I it's so funny because that was one of the things that I struggled the most with in my mid 30s, because I wanted nothing more than to be married and have a family after I lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to wait
Mm-hmm.
and wait and wait, but I wasn't going to settle. And it's not like I didn't. It's not
Right.
like I had an opportunity in college where I actually got engaged to somebody who's a great person, but and I loved him as my friend, and there was nothing wrong with him. It just, I knew that it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't right. And so, then I questioned for 20 years whether I did the right thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
actually and so when I met Glenn, it was through a mutual friend, and I was horrified that I had to have my first date with him in front of my friend and her family, because he suggested that she introduce us at a dinner at her house. And I tease him
Mm-hmm.
to this day. I'm like, who wants to go on a blind date with an audience? you know,
Yeah. Right.
but worth the
Oh
wait.
my goodness. Yes, absolutely. Audience, this is a great guest we have here today, Shelly Edwards Jorgensen, and she's talking about beautiful ashes. And I'm loving everything that you're saying now, and I know that we're wrapping it up, but you endured these tragedies, and you are now trusting God, trusting yourself, and trusting God. Can you give our audience, any insight to how taking a step towards trusting God?
Well, again, I think it starts with, like you said, trusting yourself, but it's
Mm-hmm.
understanding that we literally are divine spiritual children of
Oh,
God.
that's good.
That is
That's
who
good.
we are. And so do not let the
That's
world
good.
or anybody else tell you otherwise. Recognize that
That's good.
spirit within yourself, and and you know just if you can believe in yourself and believe in the
Mm-hmm.
ability that there is a path to healing, and trust in God. Develop, and you're right, you have to develop your own relationship, however that
Mm-hmm.
is, that supports you. You're entitled
Yeah.
to be guided. God wants to talk to you as an individual. You don't have, I mean, it's about
Mm-hmm.
developing your relationship with him. And so,
Mm-hmm.
trust yourself first, and trust that it's possible second, and then you
Yes.
then you trust in God's plan for you. That's the 1, 2, 3 steps.
Yeah.
And you have to trust in God's
you.
plan for
That's
you
cute.
100%. 100%.
100%. Yeah. 100%. Well, audience, I would love you to go out and get Shelly's amazing memoirs, Beautiful Ashes. You'll be transformed. You will laugh a little. You'll be like inquisitive. You'll also be like thinking about love. Thinking about forgiveness. You'll think about some courage because she does show a lot of courage in this book, and I want to say resilience. So make sure that you go out and get this book. How can we find you, Shelly? You're all around social media, right?
I'm on social media. If you go to my website, which is beautifulashesmemoir.com, it links, there's buttons at the top that take you to all my social media pages. It also has links to the book at Amazon, or you can get it basically anywhere online where books are sold. Barnes and Noble online. I mean, anywhere online that books are sold, but definitely Amazon. And if anybody has a book club that they want to have me as a guest, I would be happy to join you.
That'll be wonderful. All right. Well, we thank you so much for being on the show today, Shelly, and we look forward to seeing more from you in the future. Thanks again for being here, and we're going to say goodbye for now.
Thanks, Edna.